right, guys, so I'm grading the papers now, and there is that gap that can happen as I'm going through. Uh, just know that part of the reason that we do this in stages is so that you get a sense of how do I use the rubric, how do I ask questions, that you are working with the material consistently through the semester so that you are growing in your understanding with it rather than hitting week 13 and trying to remember everything we did before. I think that you can grow in your understanding of Tin, of Chirot, then of Du Bois, and of Cone every time you work it. You're not done understanding. You're not done growing into a richer retention and understanding of the material yet, and the writing will help you get there. As I move through with the rubric, we know it goes in three parts: quality of critical thought. I love having this as part of the rubric because this is where I get to try to connect with you when I see the gems of your ideas. Most of the time, those gems are still rough and undeveloped, but they're there. Most of you don't want to spend your time not thinking, and most of you have interesting and important ideas. So, quality of critical thought gives me a chance to engage with you on that. Sufficiency of evidence: how well have you targeted the information that the assignment is asking you for, and how well technically are you integrating that into your work? And then clarity: are those structural elements that, while it might feel like a cookie cutter recipe, they work in the same way that a good foundation is what you need in order to build a house. Otherwise, you have a shack. So, the structure of clarity supports your creativity. That's why it's part of the rubric. When we look up here at quality of critical thought, that first point challenges assumptions regarding definitions for terms that are central to the paper. In this case, the terms religion, magic, tradition might be one, orientation would have been a good one. The whole point there, and I want you all to know and rest assured, I don't care what dictionaries say about the word religion. I don't care what dictionaries say about conjure. I don't care what they say about magic. We are in a 4,000 level class. We are now working with experts who have been this deep in material for years, and they have framed and defined their terms in the ways that they and their peers, you don't get published unless the people around you have said, yeah, that's a good point. We are working with expert information regarding what these terms mean. When you guys are working with the terms and I can see you working with them, it means you are at that field of complexity, of understanding. The word religion is not just a word. It is a word that does work. And the way people use it and the way people understand it literally informs, it could enclose us, it can expand how we understand what's happening in the world. If you are working with the definitions provided by Long, by Albanese, if you are trying to read Tin, informed by the idea that Equiano's religion is not just a conversion to Christianity, but rather this whole journey across the globe, from Africa, through the Middle Passage, through slavery, through his manumission, into becoming the critical Christian who uses Christian rhetoric to fight against slavery. If you can understand that that entire journey can itself be read in terms of religion as an orientation to the ultimate significance of one's place in the world, then we are dealing at the 4,000 level, people. We are no longer thinking church is going to be found in a church. I mean, religion is. We are now thinking about how human beings at work in this world are all the time navigating, like anyone with a GIS does, triangulating what is the ultimate significance of my place in this world. Now, that's what I'm trying to get at in that one line about quality of critical thought. Thesis, we're going to have to do a little work on thesis. A thesis is an argument statement. It means either I have identified a problem and I'm going to show you why this is a problem, and by so doing, I am going to shine light on the complexity of this problem. Or a thesis is going to be able to say, I have a solution to a problem. This is the solution, and the paper proceeds to present this, this, and this in order to demonstrate my solution to the problem. So a thesis-driven argument means your paper will set up a problem and will proceed logically through steps of evidence to solve that problem and or shine light on the complexity of that problem. If you can't solve it, and who said anybody in one semester of a course is actually going to solve a research problem, although some of you are going to, at least what you can do is shine a light on the complexity of that problem. Now, let me just hit the point that brought me to this little video here today is that when I hit this last point about the conclusion, I am frustrated in all the great ways of people who are thinking together, which is what we are doing in this course. I intend to think very hard with you all semester. But I am frustrated because there is a gap between what these texts are saying and how much in this online environment I have successfully instructed regarding what they're doing. So I have for you a model conclusion. This is meant to give you an example of what Keller was thinking she would get in a conclusion. I am not saying that any of you should be writing these sentences, but I am saying that this is what a conclusion to this paper would look like if it was accomplishing the task of walking through the argument that was presented and then preserving that space in which you get to say, and sometimes you figure this out not until you're writing this sentence, not until you're just about to submit the paper. Oh my gosh, look what I did. In 10, I found this stuff about we were a nation of dancers and poets. And I was able to relate that insight that Equiano had about his culture to the person he became. And when I was focusing in Chiro on the hand and the role that the hand had, I saw how these were people who were creators. They were artists, and they were taking what they had, like a lock of hair from a grandmother who probably died a hard death after a very hard life. And they created something that made them a moral agent in their universe. I have cast a light on what is happening in the African heritage as it survives the diaspora. And I'm going to package that for you right now and send it right out of the ballpark because that was beautiful. When you get to that point in your writing process where you actually still have the energy and the insight to realize what you've done, that is what I want to see in that final paper. That's why we're working this hard now. Here's my model conclusion. When the moral universe of African religious culture was torn apart by a slave trade that established dehumanization on a scale never experienced before or since, the enslaved Africans had little with which to respond to the reorientation of their worlds. This paper has tracked what Olaude Equiano recalled about the traditions in his village prior to enslavement, and his earnest navigations on the landscape of the Christian culture that enslaved him, through which he developed a critical Christian ethic that led him to fight for the abolition of slavery from a Christian standpoint. In Thoreau's work, we saw that among the enslaved, they too negotiated with the tension between what bits and pieces of African traditions could be retained, while adapting to the enforced conversions to Christianity that were central to the Christian slave economy. Working with few material possessions, right? Think hair, think stick. Working with few material possessions, the enslaved developed a counter-moral universe in which they experienced themselves as significant moral beings, invoking the language of voodoo, hoodoo, magic, and religion. Now then, this is where you would add on that last sentence about what you did, particularly in this paper, the insight that you've brought that helps me see the material in a very, like, yes, they put that together and I never have kind of way. I'm not telling you to use this. I don't want to see this in your final paper. What I am trying to tell you is that technically and critically, this represents the kind of understanding I'm hoping this class can build, so that you are going to walk through the steps of the evidence you have brought together, and you are going to walk through the interpretation that gives meaning to why this stuff we're reading lays the foundation upon which we can understand African American religious culture. We are laying a foundation, people. I do not want shacks at the end of the semester. I want beautiful architecture that supports your creativity. Thanks, and thanks for your patience as I keep going on the grading.